Hello, my name is Carla, I am Skeletor and welcome to my video. So we finished Plastober last week at the end of October, on Halloween I believe, and I expressed in my last video that because Plastober was more of a general day-to-day life sort of prompt list, I didn't really get to draw anything seasonal. And although Halloween has passed and I don't intend to make any creepy drawings, I do want to get into the spirit of autumn. So I had this sketch sort of sat waiting in Procreate that I'd sort of put together quite a few weeks ago, just general sketching, and I've been getting more into drawing furry art. And I thought, what better way to represent autumn than a red fox? So for this one, I knew I wanted some sort of border to frame her face, because there's not much going on with the pose or anything. It's more to show off her bright hair. So I thought I wanted to create a border of all the typical autumn harvest sort of things you think of when you think about this time of year. I managed to get some element of Halloween in with the pumpkins, but I also included conkers, which, if you didn't know, and I only found this out maybe last week, they're also known as horse chestnuts because they come from the horse chestnut tree. And I have no idea if this is just an English thing or if everyone in the world also has horse chestnuts. But for me, they are like one of the pinnacle aspects of autumn, and my childhood was full of conkers. And most people have played the game conkers, which is where you take the conkers and you make a hole in them and tie string to them, and you sort of battle it out with other people, and you're meant to choose your biggest and hardest conker to smash against other people's conkers until one of them breaks apart. And obviously the one that doesn't break wins. However, I've never really played that game, and that's not really why I love and remember conkers so much. I just really like the fun collecting side of it. And when I was with my parents, we'd often go to places where they had huge horse chestnut trees. So I would spend so much time scouring through the grass to find all these conkers that I just used to like having and looking at. Although apparently they do give off a special chemical that is supposed to repel spiders. So a lot of people tend to have them and keep them in corners of their rooms, which is definitely a thing that our house had. Every single corner used to have a tiny collection of conkers in them, thanks to me. However, on the spider repelling front, I must admit I don't think they worked. So the main reason that I enjoy drawing like furry art isn't because I myself am a furry. I don't identify as a furry. I just really enjoy animals. And I just think there's something quite charming about anthropomorphic animals. And I feel like the furry community gets a lot of stick and has a lot of stigma, but I think that mainly stems from people that don't understand. But I just think if you don't know enough about something and that something isn't harming anyone, least of all you, then what's the issue? So I feel like a lot of the artists I follow, and I obviously follow them for this reason, they tend to draw aesthetically pleasing female characters. And it makes me want to draw that. And I did get to a point traditionally where I was comfortable in drawing female faces that looked in proportion, aesthetically pleasing, felt comfortable doing that, and then I switched to digital. And I just can't do it. I try and and I've just lost the knack. And I know it's a learning curve, but I just can never seem to get there. I know that if I put more time and effort into doing the basics of, the structure of the head and getting the proportions of the features and in the right spot and all that sort of stuff, I know I'll get there eventually, but it's so hard when you're constantly trying to draw a face and it just doesn't look right. And you know what I do if it doesn't look right first time? I give up. However, when I make furry characters, the results are the opposite. I just seem to have much more of an easy time getting the image I have in my head down on the page on my iPad. And I never even get frustrated even with like hands or anything, because there's so much more leg room, and it's completely up to me just how much of the character is the animal or human-like. So if I start out wanting to draw human hands and I'm struggling, I do have the option to make them into paws, which is much more forgiving. But looking back at all the furry art that I have made, I've never really struggled with any of them. I never got frustrated, I never gave up halfway. I've just really enjoyed the whole process. And I've sort of nailed down the procedure of making a furry character. It just ticks that box of wanting to create aesthetically pleasing female characters, with the added bonus that they're animals too. I've just always had a slight obsession when it comes to animals. I love looking at animals, I love communicating and bonding with animals, and I just feel very fulfilled in creating furry characters. In all my other artworks, I tend to not draw the things that I like to see myself, which is really stupid. I should draw what I want to draw. I should make the art that I want to make, but it always ends up something different to what I normally enjoy looking at. Whereas my furry characters, they all have very dreamy, less saturated colour palettes. Everything looks soft. I just get the dreamy vibe from the furry art that I have made. I also think one of the cool bits about furry characters are the names, and because I like to be a little bit extra, I have to create names for my characters that mean something. So I do spend a lot of time on name websites, and for this character, obviously she is a red fox, and in my naive mind thought there would be hundreds of names that would mean fox or something similar, but I was completely wrong. And it took me a while, but I did settle on the name Vulpa, which according to Google, it comes from the Latin word for fox. Pretty straightforward, nice, but in addition to that, it also explained that it means helper and stability, and I thought that was perfect because it ties in with the whole cottagecore aesthetic. So in my head, She likes to help out around the cottage or the farm. She likes to go out foraging and doing some gardening, and I just like that whole story side of it. And every single one of my original characters has a name that means something, which I guess is a little bit of an Easter egg, because I don't suppose many people would look at the names that I've chosen and think, wonder what that means, let me Google it. But I absolutely love little details like that, intentional or not. I mentioned in my last video with the mermaid with the long hair that I really enjoy drawing hair, and I like to spend too much time on drawing like every single strand, which is never ever recommended to do. But I think that's why I love drawing furry art so much, because of the fur. And when I first ever started drawing as a child, the main things I would draw, other than stick people, were animals. And the older I got, the more inclined I was to draw the fur. And as a teenager, I became more interested in wolves, and I still absolutely love wolves to this day. They're definitely my favourite animal. But back when I got back into properly drawing, I would often draw wolves from photo reference. And I think drawing fur on animals is definitely a strong point for me. Over the years, I've drawn quite a lot of animals, but I think this just explains why I enjoy drawing furry characters so much. So as for the colour palette, I'm really happy with it, but I did cheat, and I did use the Procreate tool of using a photo to create the colour palette. And all I did was take an image from Google, and I think it was a photo of an autumn scene of a bunch of trees that were all changing colours, so I knew they'd all work together. And I'm just really happy with the colours that I've picked from that palette. So this is the final result. I'm really happy with it. I think she looks great. And I can't wait to do the next one. I don't have any ideas in mind of what animal I'd like to do next or the general vibe of it, but I know that I'm gonna enjoy it nonetheless. So we've got a new guy this week called Basil, and he does say hi, but he's also being shy. Anyway, I just want to thank you so much for watching, and I hope you stick around for the next one. Ta-ra!